In a distant corner of space, aboard the frigate U.S. Vanguard, Commander Ryan Carter was in the middle of reviewing routine patrol reports when the ship's alarm blared. The sharp sound echoed through the corridors, jolting everyone on board. Lieutenant Laura Bennett, seated at the communications console, quickly scanned the incoming message. Her fingers danced over the controls as she tried to decode the scrambled transmission. It was faint, broken, and barely intelligible, but one phrase stood out. "They're here. They've breached our defenses." The bridge fell silent. Ryan stepped closer to Laura, his face tense. "Can you clean it up?" he asked, his voice steady but urgent. Laura nodded and worked faster, her brow furrowed in concentration. After a few moments, she turned to him with wide eyes. "It's from the outer colonies," she said. "They're under attack. Something big is happening." Ryan clenched his jaw. For years, humanity had feared this moment. Rumors of an alien threat had circulated for decades, dismissed by some as conspiracy theories and by others as distant possibilities. But now, those fears had become reality. Whoever, or whatever, was attacking the colonies wasn't just raiding them. They were invading with overwhelming force. "Send a priority alert to Earth Command," Ryan ordered. He turned to the rest of the crew. "Prepare the ship for warp. We're heading back." His words carried authority, but there was no mistaking the weight behind them. The Vanguard wasn't a large ship, and its crew numbered less than 100. Against an alien armada, they would be hopelessly outmatched. But staying put wasn't an option either. The colonies needed help, and so did Earth. As the Vanguard prepared to jump into warp, Ryan made another critical decision. He opened a channel to broadcast a universal distress signal. "Attention, all human ships within range," he began, his voice firm despite the tension gripping him. "This is Commander Ryan Carter of the U.S. Vanguard. The outer colonies are under attack by an unknown enemy. We need immediate reinforcements. If you can hear this message, respond and mobilize. Humanity depends on us." The response came almost instantly. Ships across nearby sectors acknowledged the call, their captains vowing to join the fight. Among them were mentions of experimental vessels, ships that had been built but never used. Ryan had heard whispers about these warships before. They were called the Eclipse-class fleet, designed as humanity's ultimate defense against any extraterrestrial threat. But they had remained dormant, locked away in secret facilities for years. Now, it seemed, their time had come. Back on Earth, Admiral Daniel Hayes listened intently to the reports flooding in from across the solar system. His office, usually calm and orderly, was now a hive of activity as officers rushed to piece together what little information they had. When Ryan's broadcast reached him, Daniel wasted no time. He activated the highest-level security protocols and issued orders to awaken the Eclipse fleet. Deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, hidden in a massive underwater dockyard, engineers sprang into action. Massive doors slid open, revealing sleek, imposing warships unlike anything humanity had ever fielded. These weren't ordinary vessels. They were titans, armed with cutting-edge weapons and powered by advanced technology. Each ship was a marvel of engineering, built to withstand even the most devastating attacks. Captain Olivia Grant was among the first to arrive at the facility. She had spent years training for this exact scenario, though she'd never expected it to actually happen. As she stepped onto the deck of the Aurora, the lead ship of the Eclipse fleet, she felt a mix of awe and dread. This was humanity's last hope, and she was now responsible for leading it into battle. Meanwhile, aboard the Vanguard, Ryan watched as the stars blurred outside the viewport as the ship entered warp. He didn't know what awaited them back home, but he knew one thing for certain. The days ahead would test humanity like never before. Deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, in a secret facility hidden from the world, engineers and technicians scrambled to bring the Eclipse-class warships online. Captain Olivia Grant stood on the edge of the massive dockyard, her eyes fixed on the towering silhouette of the Aurora, the lead ship of the fleet. It was sleek and imposing, its surface glinting faintly under the artificial lights. This was humanity's greatest achievement, a weapon designed for wars they had hoped would never come. Olivia took a deep breath as she stepped onto the gangway leading to the Aurora's airlock. She had spent years preparing for this moment, studying every detail of the ship's design and capabilities. But nothing could fully prepare her for the reality of commanding such a vessel. Behind her, Chief Engineer Marcus Doyle followed, his face pale but determined. Alongside him was Tactical Officer Samantha Sam Brooks, who carried herself with quiet confidence despite the gravity of the situation. Inside the Aurora, the crew worked tirelessly to power up the ship's systems. The hum of machinery filled the air as lights flickered to life along the corridors. Marcus moved quickly between consoles, checking readings and making adjustments. "We're good on power," he called out after a few minutes. "Engines are stable, and the weapons systems are coming online." Olivia nodded, though her mind was racing. The Aurora wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of hope, a last-ditch effort to save humanity from extinction. As she made her way to the bridge, she couldn't help but feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. If they failed, there would be no second chances. On the bridge, Sam was already at her station, running diagnostics on the ship's tactical systems. "Railguns are operational," she reported. "Drones are prepped and ready for deployment." Her voice was calm, but Olivia noticed the tension in her hands as she gripped the edges of her console. As the Aurora came fully online, other Eclipse-class ships began to awaken across the globe. In dry docks buried deep within mountains and floating platforms hidden in remote oceans, the Phoenix, Tempest, and Infinity roared to life. Each ship was assigned a captain and crew, all handpicked for their skill and bravery. Orders came down from Admiral Daniel Hayes. The fleet was to rendezvous near Jupiter as quickly as possible. Back aboard the Aurora, Olivia addressed her crew. "This isn't just about us," she said, her voice steady. "It's about everyone back on Earth. Our families, our friends, everyone counting on us to hold the line. We may not know what we're facing yet, but I trust each and every one of you to give your best." Her words seemed to ease some of the tension in the room. Marcus offered a small smile as he continued working, while Sam nodded silently. For a brief moment, the fear and uncertainty gave way to a sense of purpose. Hours later, the Aurora launched from its underwater dock, rising through the ocean like a leviathan emerging from the depths. Above the waves, it hovered briefly before blasting into the sky, leaving a trail of fire behind it. One by one, the other Eclipse ships joined it, forming a formation that stretched across the horizon. As the fleet sped toward Jupiter, Olivia allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought about the people back on Earth, huddled in shelters or fighting desperately to survive. She thought about the sacrifices that had been made to build these ships and the countless lives depending on them now. And she thought about the enemy waiting for them, an alien force whose motives and capabilities were still shrouded in mystery. For now, there was only one thing she could do: lead her crew into battle and pray they were ready for whatever lay ahead. The Eclipse fleet arrived near Jupiter, its ships gliding silently through the vast emptiness of space. The Aurora led the formation, its sleek frame cutting through the darkness like a blade. Captain Olivia Grant stood on the bridge, her eyes scanning the view screen as the gas giant loomed in the distance. The sight was breathtaking, but there was no time to admire it. Reports from Earth painted a grim picture. Entire fleets had been wiped out, cities burned, and millions were dead or missing. The Zarnak Collective, as the enemy was now called, showed no mercy. Ryan Carter's frigate, the Vanguard, joined the fleet moments later. Its arrival brought more bad news. Ryan stepped onto the Aurora's bridge, his face pale and drawn. "They're worse than we thought," he said, addressing Olivia and her crew. "Their weapons are unlike anything we've seen. Plasma cannons, energy shields, things we can't even counter yet." Olivia listened carefully, her jaw tightening with each word. She turned to Sam, who was already analyzing the data Ryan had brought. "What do you think?" she asked. Sam hesitated before answering. "If what he's saying is true, we'll need to hit them hard and fast. No prolonged engagements. We have to strike where it hurts most. Their command center." Olivia nodded. It was risky, but it might be their only chance. She outlined a plan. Use the fleet's speed and firepower to punch through the alien blockade surrounding Earth and target the Zarnak mothership directly. It was a desperate gamble, but sitting back wasn't an option. As the fleet approached Earth, the scale of the devastation became clear. Orbital stations that once served as humanity's pride lay in ruins, their skeletal remains drifting lifelessly in orbit. Below, the planet's surface was scarred by craters and firestorms. Cities that had once thrived were now reduced to ash. But amidst the chaos, faint signals flickered. Resistance fighters still holding ground, refusing to give up. The Zarnak Armada noticed the Eclipse fleet almost immediately. Dozens of alien ships peeled away from their positions around Earth, moving to intercept. Their vessels were strange, organic-looking structures that seemed to pulse with energy. They moved with eerie precision, as if guided by a single mind. "Here they come," Marcus said from his station, his voice tight with tension. The Aurora's sensors lit up as the enemy closed in. Olivia gave the order to engage. The Aurora surged forward, its railguns roaring to life. Bright streaks of light shot across the void, striking the lead Zarnak ship. For a moment, it seemed like the humans had the upper hand. Then the aliens retaliated. Their plasma cannons unleashed waves of searing energy, forcing the fleet to scatter. The battle quickly turned chaotic. The Tempest, one of the Eclipse ships, took heavy damage, its shields failing under relentless fire. Captain Benjamin Ford's voice crackled over the comms. "We're hit. Shields are down. Fall back," Olivia ordered, her heart pounding. She couldn't afford to lose another ship so soon. The Tempest limped out of the fight, its crew working desperately to keep it intact. Amidst the chaos, Sam spotted something unusual. Their movements. "They're coordinated, but not perfectly," she said, pointing to her screen. "There's a delay, like they're waiting for orders." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "Meaning?" "They're being controlled remotely," Sam replied. "If we can find the source, we might be able to disrupt them." It was a long shot, but it gave them hope. As the fleet regrouped, Olivia made a decision. They would push forward, no matter the cost. Earth depended on them, and failure wasn't an option. The Eclipse fleet surged forward, its ships weaving through the chaos of battle like predators hunting their prey. The Aurora led the charge, its railguns firing in steady bursts as it carved a path toward the heart of the Zarnak Armada. Captain Olivia Grant gripped the edge of her command console, her eyes locked on the view screen. The enemy mothership loomed ahead, a colossal structure bristling with weapons and glowing with an eerie energy. It was the source of the Zarnak's coordination, the nerve center of their attack. If they could destroy it, the tide of the battle might turn. "Focus all fire on their shields," Olivia barked, her voice cutting through the tension on the bridge. Sam nodded, her fingers flying over her console as she adjusted the targeting systems. The other ships in the fleet followed suit, their combined firepower slamming into the mothership's defenses. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, cracks began to form in the shimmering barrier protecting the alien vessel. But the Zarnak weren't about to let their command center fall without a fight. Waves of smaller ships swarmed around the Eclipse fleet, launching relentless attacks. Plasma bolts streaked past the Aurora's hull, forcing Marcus to divert power to the shields. "We can't take much more of this," he shouted, his face pale with strain. Ryan Carter's voice crackled over the comms. "Hold your positions," he urged. "If we break formation now, they'll tear us apart." Olivia clenched her jaw. She knew Ryan was right, but the pressure was mounting. The Tempest had already fallen back, its crew struggling to keep it operational. The Phoenix and Infinity were holding steady, but their shields were weakening fast. Every second felt like an eternity. Then, Sam noticed something crucial. Their shield generator. It's exposed at the base of the mothership, she exclaimed. If we can hit it directly, we might be able to disable their defenses. Olivia's mind raced. Reaching the shield generator would mean flying straight into the heart of the enemy formation, a suicide mission for whoever attempted it. But if they succeeded, it could give the fleet the opening they needed to destroy the mothership. She turned to Sam. Can you guide someone in close enough to hit it? Sam hesitated, then nodded. I can mark the target, but they'll need to get within point-blank range. It's risky. I'll do it, Marcus said suddenly, stepping forward. His voice was calm, but his hands trembled slightly. Olivia shook her head. No, you're needed here. Before anyone could respond, Sam stepped forward. I'll go, she said firmly. Her expression was resolute, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. I know the targeting systems better than anyone. I can make sure the shot counts. Olivia stared at her, torn between gratitude and guilt. Finally, she nodded. All right. Take one of the shuttles and come back alive. Sam didn't waste time. She sprinted to the hangar bay, climbing into a small, agile shuttle designed for quick maneuvers. As she launched from the Aurora, the rest of the fleet intensified their assault, drawing the Zarnok's attention away from her. On the bridge, Olivia watched the shuttle's progress on the screen, her heart pounding. Stay low and use the debris for cover, Sam instructed herself, weaving through the wreckage of destroyed ships. Behind her, the Zarnok fighters gave chase, their plasma cannons lighting up the darkness. Sweat dripped down Sam's face as she pushed the shuttle to its limits, dodging fire and closing in on the shield generator. Finally, she reached the target. With trembling hands, she lined up the shot. For Earth, she whispered, pressing the trigger. The shuttle's payload struck true, disabling the generator in a burst of light. At the same moment, a Zarnok fighter fired a plasma bolt, obliterating the shuttle in a blinding explosion. On the Aurora, silence fell. Olivia closed her eyes for a brief moment, then turned to the crew. She did it, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Now, let's finish this. With the mothership's shields down, the Eclipse fleet unleashed everything they had. Railgun rounds and missiles tore through the alien vessel, reducing it to a burning wreck. As the Zarnok forces faltered, the humans pressed their advantage, driving them back step by step. Earth wasn't safe yet, but for the first time in days, hope began to rise. With the destruction of the Zarnok mothership, the alien forces began to fall apart. Their once coordinated attacks turned chaotic, their ships scattering like leaves in a storm. The Eclipse fleet pressed its advantage, hunting down the remnants of the enemy armada. On the bridge of the Aurora, Captain Olivia Grant watched as the Zarnok fighters broke formation, retreating toward the edges of Earth's orbit. For the first time in days, she allowed herself a small breath of relief. But the cost of victory weighed heavily on her mind. Sam's sacrifice still lingered in the air, a somber reminder of the price they had paid. Marcus stood silently at his station, his face pale and drawn. He hadn't spoken much since the shuttle exploded, but Olivia knew he was thinking about Sam too. She wished she could say something to ease the pain, but words felt hollow against the enormity of what had happened. Ryan Carter's voice came over the comms, breaking the silence. "We've cleared a path," he said, his tone weary but determined. "The blockade is crumbling. Resistance fighters on the ground are starting to push back." Olivia nodded, though Ryan couldn't see her. She turned to the view screen, where images of Earth flickered to life. The planet was scared, cities reduced to rubble, forests burned to ash. But amidst the devastation, there were signs of hope. Small pockets of resistance fighters had held their ground, using whatever weapons they could find to fight back against the invaders. Now, emboldened by the fleet's success, they surged forward, reclaiming territory piece by piece. "Signal the fleet," Olivia ordered. "Tell them to provide support for the ground forces. We need to protect those fighters while they regain control." As the Aurora moved closer to Earth, the crew worked tirelessly to coordinate with the Resistance. Sam's final act had given humanity a fighting chance, and Olivia was determined to honor her memory by making the most of it. The other Eclipse ships followed suit, deploying drones and firing precision shots to clear paths for the fighters below. On the ground, the tide began to turn. In one city, a group of civilians armed with makeshift weapons managed to drive a squad of Zarnok troops out of a collapsed building. In another, a team of engineers repaired an old anti-aircraft turret, using it to shoot down several alien fighters. Each small victory fueled the Resistance's determination, spreading hope to those who had nearly given up. Back on the Aurora, Olivia took a moment to step away from the chaos of the bridge. She walked to a quiet corner of the ship, staring out at Earth through a viewport. The planet looked fragile from this distance, a pale blue orb floating in the vast darkness of space. She thought about Sam, about Marcus, and about everyone else who had sacrificed so much. They had fought not just for survival, but for the future of humanity. When she returned to the bridge, Marcus approached her. His eyes were red, but his voice was steady. "Sam would have been proud," he said quietly. "She gave us a chance, and we're taking it." Olivia placed a hand on his shoulder. "We'll make sure her sacrifice wasn't in vain," she promised. "For her, and for everyone else." Hours later, Admiral Daniel Hayes' voice crackled over the comms. "This is Admiral Hayes to all units. Reinforcements are en route. Hold your positions and prepare to secure key locations. Humanity owes you everything." The news brought a renewed sense of purpose to the fleet. The battle wasn't over yet, but for the first time, it felt like they might actually win. As the Aurora moved into position above a burning city, Olivia gave the order to deploy aid packages filled with food, water, and medical supplies. The Resistance fighters below cheered, their voices crackling over the comms. For now, there was hope. But deep in uncharted space, far beyond the reach of human sensors, another signal pulsed faintly, a warning that humanity's trials might not yet be over. Weeks passed after the battle, and Earth began the long process of healing. The scars of war were everywhere: burned cities, broken families, and fields where crops once grew now reduced to ash. But amidst the ruins, humanity found strength. Survivors emerged from shelters, their faces marked by exhaustion but also determination. They worked together to rebuild homes, clear debris, and care for the wounded. Slowly, life started to return to a fragile sense of normalcy. The Eclipse fleet returned to Earth as heroes. The Aurora led the formation, its battered hull a testament to the fierce battles it had endured. Captain Olivia Grant stood on the bridge, watching as the ship descended through the atmosphere. Below, people gathered in streets and squares, cheering and waving flags. Some held up signs with messages like, "Thank you," and "We stand strong." It was a moment of triumph, but Olivia felt no joy, only the weight of responsibility. She thought of Sam and all those who hadn't made it back. Ryan Carter's frigate, the Vanguard, landed nearby. Ryan joined Olivia as she stepped off the Aurora onto solid ground for the first time in weeks. The air smelled of smoke and ash, but there was something else too, a faint hint of hope. Civilians surrounded them, offering hugs and tears of gratitude. A young boy handed Olivia a small handmade model of the Aurora. "You saved us," he whispered before running back to his parents. Later that evening, Admiral Daniel Hayes held a ceremony to honor the fallen. Rows of candles flickered in the night, each one representing someone who had given their life during the war. Marcus stood beside Olivia, his hands clasped tightly together. He hadn't spoken much since Sam's death, but tonight he broke his silence. "She would have hated this," he said softly, gesturing at the formal gathering. "She always said ceremonies were just excuses for speeches." Olivia managed a small smile. "Maybe, but she'd be proud of what we did, of what everyone did." As the days turned into weeks, the rebuilding efforts gained momentum. Engineers worked around the clock to restore power grids and communication networks. Farmers planted new crops in fields reclaimed from the ashes. Schools reopened, and children returned to classrooms, though many struggled to comprehend the horrors they had witnessed. Memorials were erected in every city, bearing the names of those who had died defending humanity. But even as Earth healed, ominous warnings began to surface. Deep in uncharted space, sensors picked up faint signals, strange pulses that didn't match any known human or alien technology. Scientists analyzed the data, but answers remained elusive. Admiral Hayes called an emergency meeting with Olivia and other key leaders. "We don't know what these signals mean yet," he admitted, "but we can't ignore them. Whatever's out there, it might not be friendly." Olivia listened carefully, her mind racing. The Zarnak Collective had been defeated, but the universe was vast, and humanity was still vulnerable. She glanced at Ryan, who nodded silently. Both knew the fight might not truly be over. For now, though, there was peace. The Eclipse fleet remained on standby, ready to respond if needed. Olivia spent her days overseeing repairs to the Aurora and training new recruits. At night, she often found herself staring at the stars, wondering what challenges lay ahead. Humanity had faced extinction and survived, but survival wasn't enough. They needed to grow stronger, smarter, and more united if they hoped to endure. One evening, Marcus approached her with a small box. Inside was a folded piece of paper, Sam's final message, recovered from the wreckage of her shuttle. "For Earth, for humanity," it read. Olivia's throat tightened as she traced the words with her finger. "She gave us a future," Marcus said quietly. "It's our job to make sure it's worth fighting for." Olivia nodded, tucking the note safely away. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, humanity had earned a moment of rest. Above them, the stars shone brightly, a reminder of both the dangers and possibilities that awaited beyond the horizon. Months passed, and Earth continued to heal. The scars of war remained visible, charred landscapes, empty streets where homes once stood, and memorials etched with the names of those who had fallen. But life found a way to move forward. Cities were rebuilt, crops began to grow again, and children laughed in parks that had been reduced to rubble just months before. Humanity had faced its darkest hour and emerged battered but unbroken. Captain Olivia Grant spent her days aboard the Aurora, overseeing repairs and training new recruits. The Eclipse fleet was no longer needed for battle, but it remained ready, a symbol of humanity's resilience. Olivia often stood on the bridge, gazing at Earth through the viewport. It was a fragile sight, a pale blue dot floating in the endless void. But it was home. She thought about Sam frequently, wondering what she would have said about the progress being made. "She'd probably tell us to stop resting on our laurels," Marcus joked one day, earning a rare smile from Olivia. Ryan Carter visited the Aurora often, bringing updates from other parts of the world. Resistance fighters who had once waged guerrilla warfare against the Zarnak were now leading efforts to rebuild their communities. In one city, a group of engineers repurposed alien wreckage to create new technologies, sparking hope for a brighter future. Ryan shared these stories with Olivia, knowing they reminded her why they had fought so hard. But not everything was peaceful. Scientists monitoring deep space continued to detect strange signals, pulses of energy that defied explanation. At first, they dismissed them as residual effects of the Zarnak invasion, but when the signals grew stronger and more frequent, Admiral Daniel Hayes ordered an investigation. "We can't ignore this," he told Olivia during a private meeting. "Whatever's out there, it's heading toward us." Olivia agreed. She assembled a small team, including Marcus and Ryan, to investigate. They boarded the Aurora and set course for the source of the signals. As they traveled deeper into uncharted space, the crew felt a mix of excitement and dread. What awaited them could be another threat, or an opportunity to learn more about the universe. After weeks of travel, they arrived at a distant star system. There, orbiting a dying sun, was a massive structure unlike anything they had ever seen. It wasn't a ship or a weapon, but something else entirely. A gateway, pulsing with light. Sensors couldn't determine its purpose, but one thing was clear. It was ancient, far older than humanity itself. As the Aurora approached, a message appeared on their screens. It wasn't in words, but in images, scenes of stars being born, planets forming, and civilizations rising and falling. Then came a warning, a depiction of destruction, followed by a plea for unity. The message ended with a single phrase, translated into every human language. Prepare yourselves. Olivia stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Whatever this structure was, it wasn't hostile, not yet anyway. But it was a reminder that humanity wasn't alone in the universe. There were others out there, watching, waiting, perhaps judging. Back on Earth, Admiral Hayes received the report. He called Olivia immediately. "What do you think it means?" he asked. "I don't know," Olivia admitted, "but it feels like a test, a chance to prove we're worthy of a place among the stars." Hayes was silent for a moment. "Then let's make sure we pass." The Aurora returned to Earth, carrying both answers and questions. Humanity had survived one war, but the universe had more challenges in store. For now, though, there was peace, a fragile, hard-won peace. And as long as people like Olivia, Marcus, and Ryan stood ready to face whatever came next, humanity had a fighting chance. Above them, the stars shone brightly, a reminder of how far they had come, and how far they still had to go.